So that's just kind of a taster of what I do, which is very music inspired. It's very kind of British, it's very punk influenced. And I'm a British designer, but I've been living in the US for a long, long time. Who's younger than 32 years old? So I've been living in the US longer than you've been alive. But I haven't kind of lost my sort of British taste, if you like. And so that is really what informs me as a designer and has informed much of the work that I do. As Satya said, I've sold to a lot of retail stores in the US and around the world with my own collections. And I've been lucky to collaborate with some amazing brands and amazing people. And the kind of art of collaboration is something that I think is still relevant today as much as it's ever been. Back in the early 2000s, I was able to collaborate with Reebok, and that helped me as an emerging designer to kind of fund my business. And then subsequent collaborations with many other brands, many other sort of partners, not just in fashion, but or rather apparel, but in footwear and accessories, in fragrance, with a myriad of companies, with many different companies. So I've been very fortunate to do that, and I've been fortunate to work as a design director and creative director with other brands too, like Ben Sherman and John Barbatos and others. My biggest influence as a young person was David Bowie, and I was fortunate to work with him too, and staged a tribute to him when he passed away in New York City. So one thing I would say to anybody that's forming or founding a brand is when you have goals, write those goals down, because you can kind of manifest. I really believe in this. You can manifest these things to happen. They kind of become really good benchmarks for your brand evolution, and they actually help you to formulate a strategy and a plan, which I think is really key to success with any brand at any level. Also, as Satya said, I've worked a lot in education for the past 15 years, working with emerging talent, both in fashion design and fashion business. Currently, I work with, anybody a hip-hop fan here? Anybody listen to hip-hop? So you know Dr. Dre, right? So I work with USC's Iovine and Young Academy, and the young part of that is Andre Young, who's Dr. Dre. And so they founded a school as part of USC, which enables young talents to innovate and become entrepreneurs in technology, in all other sectors, artificial intelligence and so on, and apply that to fashion. So I feel really fortunate to be able to continue to encourage young talents and emerging designers. One of the things that I'm really proud of to have been able to achieve is when I was invited to go to Ukraine Fashion Week, Kyiv Fashion Week in 2021. And I'd never been to Kyiv before. Much the same as coming to Guadalajara. It was an amazing experience, seeing a lot of formidable talent, not just in fashion, but in all other areas of creativity. And my experience there left a really strong influence on me. And I was there probably like 4 months before the war started. So when the war started, literally the next day, I thought, what can I do to help some of these young creatives that I've met, and to do something positive and to give them hope to look forward to? And so I began to put together an event at New York Fashion Week in collaboration with a lady called Kay Unger, who's the chair of the board of Parsons, and some other kind of partners in that. Tommy Hilfiger was one, and MasterCard were another. And we were able to bring 6 of the designers who'd shown in Kyiv in Ukraine to New York Fashion Week that September and give them a platform to present their work. And one of those designers just dressed Beyonce for the halftime event that she did recently with her kind of cowboy Carter look. So I'm sure some of you saw that or heard about that. You probably saw pictures of Beyonce. So that was one of the Ukrainian designers, a young man called Frolov. And he dresses a lot of celebrities now too, a lot of very famous A-listers. So that's something I'm very proud of. So enough about me. Do we need fashion? Anybody wants to tell me why we need fashion? Come on, you're all here. You must want fashion. Please. Absolutely, it is. It's communication. What else? Yeah, absolutely, a way to be different, a way to tell others about you. You know, it's self-expression, it's communication, it's belonging, it's signaling to others what your preferences are, what you like. It's attracting others to. You know, if maybe you like that person and you want to go out on a date, maybe the way you dress, they may resonate with you and think, oh yeah, I like the way that person dresses. At least the first impression is good. So it's a great form of human expression and an art form for all of us. And while we're going through a lot of introspective thinking about fashion, because we're thinking about the waste that it causes, we're thinking about the lack of sustainability that's in the fashion system, we're thinking about some of the inequities that not everybody can afford fashion, right? So there are issues with the fashion industry, but fundamentally it's a really great expressive art form. And I think we would all agree that we're lucky to be able to work in it and to enjoy it and to do that job, a job that, you know, most other people would love to do, to be in the fashion industry. So we're all very lucky to have that. So absolutely we need fashion. I do want to point out, I credited on some of these slides some of the photographers whose work I'm showing here. This one is Solveig Sundsbø, who you may have seen his work. He shoots for all the major ad campaigns. He's a Norwegian photographer, and he's been working for the last 20 years. I love his work, so you know, I want to make sure that, I mean, he's a super well-known photographer, but I want to make sure that people see that credit on there. So recently, I was in London doing something similar at Central St. Martin's, which is my old school, and I was really fortunate to be able to go to this fabulous exhibition. And my colleague Lula was asking me about young designers coming out of London, and this is actually an example of young designers who emerged in the 80s in London. And it's an exhibition that is at Zandra Road's Fashion and Textile Museum at the moment. It's really amazingly inspiring, and you see a lot of these kind of interesting ideas staged on mannequins that are styled after the original designers or creatives that kind of created those looks. So I'm going to show, I made a little clip of it, and I'm going to show you that right now. So this was a time in London that is kind of doing the sort of circular movement at the moment. It's being readdressed and becoming a big influence on young designers today. And the reason why I wanted to share that with you is because when we think about trends, and we're looking for trends, and we're looking for the next big idea, an instance like this is something that is really influential. And just to give you another example, I was very much part of that trend. This is me with my long orange hair. Still have hair, still orange. So, but really that exhibition was about this person, Lee Bowery. Anybody heard of this person? So he was a very outrageous club entrepreneur in London. He created many fabulous outfits and looks. And as well as the Outlaws exhibit, coming up in February at the Tate Modern is an exhibit of work that he did with the fashion photographer Nick Knight and also another fashion photographer called Fergus Greer. So this is very much an influential moment that you're going to see coming up on runways around the world that are going to be referencing this moment in time. And I think it's a really kind of key moment in British fashion because you could see that echoed throughout the world in the 80s and now coming back again and being echoed throughout the world in the 21st century. Okay, so what do brands want to communicate? What do brands want to communicate with their identity, with their branding? Anybody want to have a go at that? Yeah, about them, about their brand, about their products, and so on. Fantastic. What's your name? Diana.
Diana. Yeah.
Say again.
So I was saying that they want to communicate their DNA and also what can they do for you as a customer.
So, you're quite right. So their DNA, which can be shown in their mission statement, in their vision, in their brand values. And those brand values today could include a sustainable focus. They could include a more inclusive approach to fashion. They could be speaking about social concerns. And I think that's something that is very, very important. So the flip side of that, what does today's consumer want? And again, there's a little credit to Miles Aldridge, who's another amazing fashion photographer whose work I particularly enjoy. So this is one of his images. So what does today's consumer desire? They don't know. That's a good answer. That's a very good answer. I think the consumer doesn't know what they want until you give it to them. And it's our job to do that. It's our job to lead the consumer. It's very important as sort of developing a brand or developing a design idea, ethos, to actually lead. And that might mean doing things that are sort of slightly ahead of what the consumer wants. And in some cases, you may have an idea and you may present that in a retail space or online. It may not initially resonate with the consumer, but that doesn't mean it's a bad idea, right? I really believe in failure as a good failure, as a good learning process for any brand. Because what failure sometimes means is you're just a little bit too far ahead of what the consumer wants. But you learn from that failure. You don't kind of retreat from it. You learn from it and move forward. There's obviously good failure and bad failure. Bad failure might be making really bad business and financial decisions. But good failure might be creating a marketing campaign that maybe is a little bit too provocative for your customer, or presenting a fabric idea, a fabrication that maybe the customer doesn't necessarily understand in the first place. You know, I did a collection for the retailer, big American retailer Target, and I started working with them in 2006, so almost 20 years ago. And in the first collection, I wanted to do skinny jeans for men with stretch. And what Target said to me was, oh, no, you cannot do skinny jeans for men with stretch fabric because stretch fabric is for women's wear, right? But we did it, and we tested it. They were right. The men's customer at Target did not quite understand it, but we kept going with it. And, you know, the market, and certainly in menswear, completely adopted stretch fabrics. Because what men understood was the comfort factor of stretch, even more so than the fashionability of it. You know, I think, you know, maybe the ladies in the audience might wear a stretch jean because of the way it fits your body and flatters your silhouette. Initially, the way a lot of men wore a stretch jean was because they could actually bend down and it felt comfortable. You know, so that kind of good failure, I think, is important. And that speaks to one of the first notes up on the screen there, which is innovation. So I think the customer does want innovation. They don't necessarily know they want it until you give it to them, obviously, because that's why it's an innovation. I think today they do want collaboration still between brands. They want a fashion brand to maybe collaborate now with something unexpected rather than collaborating with another fashion brand. A good friend of mine, a gentleman named Raoul Shah, who's is a brand developer and marketer in the UK. His clients are both Nike and Adidas. And he said to me his dream is to get Nike and Adidas to collaborate. He said it will never happen, but he would love to make that happen. So, and you'll hear from him a little bit later. There's a lot of talk today about AI, and one thing this is a rabbit hole that we could go down. One thing I will say is I do believe AI is an amazing tool for all of us. The one thing AI doesn't necessarily do is to make mistakes. And humans are great at making mistakes, but mistakes often lead to an outcome that is really successful that we didn't know we were trying to achieve, right? We wouldn't have penicillin if it wasn't for a mistake, okay? So I think the thing with AI is it's great as a tool to prompt. It's great at developing imagery. It's great at all of these other factors. And I don't think we should be afraid of it. I think we should utilize it. I have a very sort of positive idea about AI for the future. So if you think about fashion, you think about how that's changed. And it's always changed with innovation. The Industrial Revolution gave us the mechanical loom. It gave us the sewing machine. It gave us the industrialization of moving goods around the world. It changed fashion from being something that you made at home to something that was scalable. And also, you think of more recently the sort of evolution of the department store system and of multi-store brands. So that gave fashion again another point to evolve. And then with synthetic fabrics, for example, DuPont's innovation of creating nylon. Again, that was a point at which fashion was really able to evolve. So I think AI is now another point that we can utilize in that way. I love this quote from Truman Capote. We all know, I think because we're all here and we're working in the industry, we know that fashion is really tough. It's not for the faint-hearted. We need to really grab hold of it and make it ours. It's a difficult industry to be in, but there's a really positive outcome from it. So I wanted to just jump into this section. So I have a book, which is, you must have all seen the little bookmarks on your chair. It's called The Fashion Entrepreneur. And this was just recently published, and I was able to work with some friends of mine in the industry to get some insights from them. These are the folks that are interviewed in the book, and I'm going to share some of their insights with all of you now. So, for example, Betsy Pierce is an amazing fashion lawyer. Julian Vogel is one of the most successful and really forward-thinking public relations people in the world. Jenny Packham, amazing fashion designer, and Jenny and I were at college together. We've known each other for 40 years. Raoul Shah, again, another very influential sort of branding, marketing person. Tommy Hilfiger, you all know. Carla Martinez de Salas, you should all know. Laure Dubray is the founder of Webster, and Mazdak Razi is the founder of Milk. So I'm going to talk about a few of their insights. So first of all, we need to ask ourselves a question again. Do we need fashion? Yes. Do we need another fashion brand? Well, why not? Why not? You're all here. You must all have brands yourselves, or at least you work for a brand, or you have a vision to create a brand. So yes, we always need another good fashion brand, a brand that does something. So I'm going to share with you Razi's point on that.
So my name is Mazdak Razi, and I am co-founder of the Milk brand, which consists of Milk Studios and all of the services divisions around Milk.
Right.
And also co-founded Milk Makeup, which was our first consumer product play in the beauty industry, um, which we launched 7 years ago, and the other parts of Milk, which are other consumer concepts that we're working on today. Primarily, what I do is work on brand architecture, strategy, and position.
Right. If an entrepreneur's starting up fashion brands in goods or services, what are the three mistakes that you've seen being made most often?
So the first one is not having a point of view, like a very straightforward, distinctive POV, and it leads to the questions of you have to be able to answer why you exist. Does the world really need another fashion brand? Two, what is the differentiation? Why are you different? Because if you're not different, then it goes back to the first question of why should you exist? And I think the third is, will people see your view? Because if it's just for you, that view, you built a view that is shared by you or a few people like yourself, then don't do it. Because you're not making the world a better place and you're not making it a smaller place. You're, which gets me to the second top mistake entrepreneurs make, which is they don't think big enough sometimes. So you can't, and it's not just financially or from an entrepreneur like trying to take over the world. That's not. But like creating things that, especially in fashion, for people like yourself. Or thinking about all I want to do is if I can just sell my collection and all of these pieces, I have a business. You don't. You have an art project. So it's really thinking about how do you create something that the world can enjoy. So think big. Because it's the same amount of work. It goes back a little bit to what we're talking about, which is this idea of community. Some people call them customers, others call them consumers. At Milk, we've always thought of them as the community we built that uses our products, buys our products. But even if we didn't have products, they would subscribe to our world. I said, don't build a business, build a community, because it's the best business.
That's great.
And I really, even all these years, it totally still makes sense to me. It's that, if you're trying to go out there and get customers, you get into this world of acquisition, this idea of how to almost buy a customer to buy your product. This is a spiral to your death, right?
So great insights from Mazdak Razi. So why do you exist? Do something different. Make the world a better place. These are all points that I think are really demanded of every brand today. And so it might be a point of, thinking about the product that you already have, that already exists, and how do you recalibrate that to address some of these issues. Or you might be creating a completely new business, a completely new brand, in which case you have the blank canvas to address this. But going back to what the customer wants, this consumer, or rather this community member, they want this innovation. They want something that means something. They want something that creates a better world, and do it in a way that you work on a big, broad canvas, because that's so important today. next question, do we need physical retail spaces? I think we do. I think that, there's nothing better than an amazing retail experience. There's nothing better than an amazing retail store. The Webster is a group of stores in the US. It's actually, they are international. They're also in Canada. And Laura Debray has done an amazing job of creating something that you feel like when you go into each one of those stores in each different location, you're in the closet of the owner of the store. But each location refers to the place geographically where it's situated. So the Miami store is very different to the Palm Springs store. The LA store is very different to the New York store. So I believe that physical retail, the interaction between the community member, the customer, and the retail space is really so key today, more than ever. It's great to have an amazing online presence, but you need to create retail as an experience, both online and in the physical realm too. So, like I said, do we need real physical retail spaces? Yes, we do, and I hope everyone would really agree with that. One of the other folks that I interviewed in the book is Tommy Hilfiger, and he gave a couple of really good insights, one of which you see here: never give up. Never give up, but don't overthink it. Don't get into analysis paralysis, as he says. Go with your instincts. It's very, very important that your instinct often delivers the correct answer. The first thought is often the best thought. He also said one of the lessons he really learned is if you make a mistake, move to correct it immediately. Don't let that mistake roll on for a while. Just kind of own up to it, figure out a way to correct it, and move forward. And also, as a brand, Hilfiger have tried to innovate. They've tried to, do something fresh all the time. They've tried to build. They've tried to evolve. They moved into the adaptive clothing space about 4 years ago, and that was something that was very close to Tommy's heart because one of his children is dealing with disabilities. So Tommy wanted to really work in that sector and deliver something to his community that made the world a better place. Similarly with Jenny Packham, I don't know if any of you know of Jenny. She's a very established British designer. She does all the red carpet. She dresses major celebrities, and the red carpet is a powerful tool for her. When she started, she was addressing a lot of British celebrities who are not quite A-listers. So she stepped back from the very red carpet for a while and then readdressed until she could actually get to the Hollywood A-listers. And she's dressed Kate Middleton many times. She's kind of one of Kate Middleton's favorite designers. So she took a risk, which was to step back for a while from the dressing red carpet, and then was able to kind of address that sector, and has had tremendous success from it. Now, I asked Carla Martinez de Salas, what are editors looking for? And she gave me some really amazing insights too. One of which she said, don't diminish the hard reality and the opportunity of sometimes being the only Latinx in the room, which in the United States, that can be the case. Obviously, not so in Mexico, but in the United States and around the world, it's an important factor to think about and not to have a negative reaction to. I see amazing talent in this exhibition. I see some fantastic fashion and some really great fashion shows that are equal to anything I see in America, across Europe and in Asia too. So I think you should all, and we should all, feel very proud of all of this great work that we're doing. It's very important to acknowledge that, and it's great to be in this venue to do that. Obviously, Carla also mentioned the sort of representation of all people, within editorial, and that's something that's very, very important to her. And she looked at beauty standards, which differ in different parts of the world, obviously, but this was a really important factor for her to address too. Raul Shah, I mentioned earlier. Raul has spent the last 30-odd years working with some of the most influential brands in the world. You see them here. And now he doesn't have so many fashion brands. He has brands across many lifestyle sectors. He's diversified a lot. But one of the things he said is, this is such a great idea. Make one person happy, they will tell 10 people. Make one person unhappy, because of social media, they'll tell the world, they'll tell everyone. So it's really beholden to us as creators, as brand managers, as marketers, as retail owners, to consider that very, very carefully, to really make sure that the folks that we're speaking to get a great message from us.
So the biggest white space that the industry has got to fill up and take on has to revolve around sustainability and circularity. Has to be. There is just too much stuff, and you can't undo it because it's there. It's already. I don't know. There's some statistics worth googling. Actually, Keanan, there's some statistics about how much product is made in the global fashion industry that never ever gets sold. I think it's sort of like might be something as mad as 20 or 30% of items made never even see the light of day.
That's obviously an important factor. Sustainability is a huge subject matter. It's something that you can't address in a kind of flippant way. There are many different paths to sustainability, and each of you have probably ideas and strategies for each of your brands. So it's very important to think about that. But consider Raoul Shah is working with all of the leading brands in the world across many different classifications, and he's maintaining as a sort of mantra to each of those brands how important it is to think about packaging, to think about the carbon footprint that they use, and to sort of address that in the deepest way that they possibly can. So maybe it's with the materials that you use. Maybe you're using a mushroom fabric. Maybe you're using a mushroom leather, or maybe you're using a silk made from citrus skins, or maybe you're even just thinking about the coat hangers that you're using and making them replenishable rather than disposable. So there's a lot of different factors that we can consider here. Using less water in the production process, using less chemicals in the production process. That goes back to thinking about the fabric suppliers and the materiality that we're using and working with. There are many different options, but I think it's extremely important to consider it. One of the brands that I've worked with for a long, long time is Aveda, the hair product brand. You could probably tell I like hair products, right? They have done an amazing job in making not only their product sustainable, but also the packaging itself reusable, recyclable. It's a super important factor. Using dead stock fabrics, considering using repurposing of garments. There's so much second-hand fabric waste in the world. So again, this is part of what we should consider as we think about whether we need fashion or not. Yes, we do, but we need a system that can do it in a more thoughtful and in a more ethical way. Ethical Fashion Initiative is another instance, an example, that are working with artisans in areas of the world where luxury goods weren't normally made. And Simone Cipriani, who founded this, he's part of the United Nations, and he's been able to take small leather goods manufacturing from Tuscany and export it. So teaching artisans in West Africa, in Haiti, and in other regions. And they're working with Gucci, with Vivienne Westwood, with Stella McCartney, so leading luxury goods brands. One of the other contributors to the book is Betsy Pierce. Betsy is one of the most respected fashion lawyers, and she does all of the deals for some of the folks that you see on this slide. So she set up Lee McQueen's deal with Gucci initially. She helped build Kanye West brand, Nicolas Ghesquiere, Rick Owens, the list goes on and on. She's worked with all of these folks. And I asked her about fast fashion and what she feels about it. And she said something that I thought was a great answer. And I'll paraphrase, but basically it's that a lot of leading countries in the world where fast fashion has existed are now sort of saying, well, fast fashion is really bad, and therefore we should kind of get rid of it, or we should not really consider it as much. But fast fashion makes the fashion system available to everybody. So whether your pocketbook allows you to buy LVMH goods, or whether it allows you to buy H&M goods, it's an accessibility. And I think that the luxury goods brands are addressing sustainability, as are the fast fashion brands. So it's super important to sort of consider the fact that fashion can exist at all different price points. But if it's doing what Mazdak Rassi initially said, which is doing something that has a point of view, making the world a better place, really doing something with a point of difference. That's really a key factor. I'm going to move on to the last person in my interviews
What
here,
are the
which is
top
Julian Vogel.
3 areas of advice that you would give to a fashion entrepreneur in order to create an effective public relations strategy when they're starting up?
Okay. I mean, I think that everything has to start with, you know, what are you trying to say, and what is it that you want to communicate, and what does your brand stand for? What's the story? What are you trying to what are you trying to convey through the product that you're creating? So I think the kind of the sort of real kind of why, you know, why are you doing this? And I suppose I always start with those really basic questions, you know, why, what, where, you know, how, because I think that you really have to get that honed down, and you have to have like a really compelling reason, and also when you, so I think that's the most important thing for me right from the very start is, you know, why are you doing this, and what are you doing, and then I think everything really stems from that, because that then starts to help you understand, and then the second question is like, who are you going to be selling this to, or who are you making this for? Because I think you have to start with a consumer in mind, and then everything kind of stems from that. And then I think there's a sort of price, you know, what part of the market are you going for? You know, is it luxury, or is it more mass? So I suppose those are the three big areas.
So yeah, those last insights from Julian Vogel are really key. Why are you doing this? What are you doing? Who are you doing it for? And what are you doing? Really key questions to think about. And just to summarize, so some of the things that have come up during this presentation. Does the world need another fashion brand? Yes, we do. Can we create something that the whole world can enjoy? Does it have a sort of broad reach? Does it make the world a better place? Will people see your point of view? Why do you exist as a brand? Like, what are you doing? What are you fulfilling? Are you building a community? And finally, think big, because it's the same amount of work to think big as it is to think small. And you know, the likelihood is, if you reach for something and you think big, you may not quite get there, but you may kind of get like 75% of what you want to fulfill. So I think that's a really key and really important factor. So I'm going to wrap up today, and I want to thank you all. I'll leave you with this quote from Andrew Carnegie, who is an amazing industrialist and also philanthropist. He says, "You are what you think, so just think big, believe big, act big, work big, give big, forgive big, laugh big, love big, and live big." And I want to thank you for your time. I do appreciate it. And we're going to take some questions, I think, now.
Regarding to the fashion, talking about more of the business side of fashion, I tend to have this question very strongly, and it's how are we going to be able to compete with conglomerates like LVMH, that they are just buying and buying and buying other brands? Like, what is our line of defense? Because we knew, like, from like I believe a year ago or even months ago, that it was found out that even Dior was using illegal illegal material sources from fabrics that in theory shouldn't be in Italy. So my question is, how can we maintain a sustainable way without being either undercut by prices when it comes to competing with those enterprises, to not be chokeholded like some, like this illegitimate competence that some brands tend to try to replicate something like yours, not entirely, but similar enough to make it in a bigger scale, a better price, so that people rather choose theirs. For example, Louis Vuitton makes something similar to another brand that is more regional of here, so they end up selling more to that compared to the others. How can we fight against that?
So, very, very good question. What's your name?
Christian Medel.
Christian.
Christian.
Christian. So thank you, Christian. The great question. So how to compete against some of these conglomerates? Well, they are sort of massive businesses with massive infrastructure, and they are somewhat slower to move than a smaller, more nimble brand. So I think if you're coming to market with an idea, it's very difficult to come up with a new idea in fashion, right? I think everybody would agree that it's very hard to kind of invent the new mousetrap, for example. So creating that new thing is really tricky. But I'll give an example of a lifestyle brand. Does everybody or anybody know of Alo? A-L-O, yeah, right. So Alo kind of address a very particular lifestyle. Their consumer recognizes that they are authentic in that lifestyle. They're the real thing. They're creating innovative products. They may not be able to create completely original fabrics or original products, but there's somewhat of an innovation there. And I think that, you know, in the beginning, they started working out of their garage. The husband and wife that started that firm started working out of their garage. So they were able to kind of identify this niche market, which actually, when we say niche, sometimes we think it's a small market, but a niche could be a huge market. So the kind of yoga lifestyle industry is really that niche. The well-being industry is that niche. They addressed that, and they were able to kind of come up with some of these innovations that together gave an authenticity to the brand. And I think you can't compete against the marketing dollars of an LVMH or a Kering or Richemont, but you can compete in terms of very authentic ideas, innovations, speaking to a particular consumer. And also, if you look at the luxury goods market right now, it's downtrending. So globally, their sales have gone weaker and weaker. Obviously, most of these brands create ready-to-wear to drive fragrance, accessories, and footwear. That's where they make most of their money. The ready-to-wear is almost like the store window to get a consumer excited about it and to ultimately sell fragrance in an airport, right? So they are really focused on that business model, but that business model is not really working for them at the moment. So I think as a smaller, more evolutionary brand, you can be more nimble, and if you're authentic, your customer will hear that, and they'll come to you because you're the originator, you're the real thing. You kind of created that niche, and you spoke to that customer and that community initially, and I think it will give you a foothold to maintain a market share and obviously grow it. I do believe today that it's really important to have independent brands in the marketplace. Otherwise, we'll end up with a monopoly of LVMH, Kering, and Richemont basically owning everything in that sector, and then fast retailing, Inditex, and H&M owning everything in the mass sector. I was saying yesterday that I do believe that both of these sectors are well positioned to do this. But I think that the fast fashion sector is really well positioned to encourage emerging talent and to give emerging talent retail exposure within some of their stores. I know they do collaborations and short-term things, but I'm thinking more of a sort of long-term approach. So I think it's tough to compete against a Gucci or an Louis Vuitton or whatever, but I actually don't think you're really competing against them, because you can go into either your own retail space or go into independent retail spaces and make your mark to establish your brand. It's just as difficult now as it's ever been. I don't think it's more or less difficult. But emerging talent today breaking through. There's so much noise because of social media, and everyone thinks, oh, I'll use social media to kind of build my place in the market. That's what everybody's doing. So not only do you need marketing through social media, but you need a really compelling story. And I think that's one of the key factors. You need a great product, you need a point of view, you need something significant in the marketplace that's different from what everyone else is doing. And you know, you need that commitment from a community and to a community. So yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Do you think it will be like a wiser idea to create some sort of separate market in the same style of business? Because, for example, one idea that I thought that it would be especially useful for a place like Mexico, where we don't have a strong system of, well, a strong business fashion, like Milan, say Paris, or something like that, I think is to force us to, for example, create our own independent area of fashion era. For example, you know, say, I don't know, in Leon, you create a fashion week with local brands, or you create like a pop-up store that takes various local brands from here and find a way to export them to other markets without taking brands from, for example, LVMH to like kind of hinder their market. I think that's like a way that we can try to fight against that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that's really impressive about visiting Mexico is that there's still a manufacturing infrastructure here. There are still artisans in different regions that are creating products in a way that historically has always been made. That's certainly gone in the United States. It's gone in some European countries too. So Mexico has a massive advantage to utilize the small scale production and also the larger scale production. You know, so to your point, to create something within Mexico, I think is, you know, and it's done here. I mean, Intermoda is an amazing sort of window to the world for the fashion industry in Mexico. So yeah, I think building a further infrastructure here and a strong fashion week, you know, and that's happened in the past. I mean, Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week happened in Mexico, you know, sort of 20 years ago. But I think with small brands, it's good. Strength is in numbers. So small brands working together, I think, is a great way to kind of leverage each of their individual strengths and to create a platform to market them to the world. So yeah, I do. I agree with that, for sure. Any other questions? Diana, right? Diana has a question over here.
We have time for a really quick question.
Thank you. One question about sustainability. How can we at least make fast fashion companies produce 30% less? That is the average garments that are not ever sold. So how can we do that? That could be a good start, no?
It would be a great start. I would be sitting on a beach right now if I knew the answer to that question. It's very hard for fast fashion to scale down. The great thing that has happened with social media, it's put a lot of power in the hands of the consumer to actually make fast fashion brands more accountable for their manufacturing processes and their distribution and so on. So I think it's partially about the consumer to speak louder to those brands, and I think they are doing. You know, H&M has sustainability initiatives in place. What they do in ratio to their entire business is more than most small fashion completely. And by the way, it's impossible to be completely sustainable. I work with a factory in Tuscany in Italy. A friend of mine owns a factory, and he says to me, he has a circular water system in his factory. He has solar-powered machines, all the rest of it. And he says, as soon as I make something and it goes on a truck and it goes down the street, it's immediately causing a carbon footprint. So he doesn't actually believe he can be more than 30% sustainable. So it's really a difficult thing, and it's case by case. But I think part of it is educating a consumer to consume less, which is very, very hard because we all want kind of more of everything. You know, who doesn't want any more? Who's got enough clothes in their closet? But will you still buy more?
Yeah, I think maybe revaluing clothes is important because
Yeah.
clothes has lost its value and it's become
Yes.
disposable. So
Yeah, yeah.
just making better.
Yeah, and that's a
buying less.
marketing it's from the brand to the consumer. It's educating the consumer to buy in a more conscious way. You know, I think that's really important. All of the other initiatives, use less water, use less chemicals, you know, they're key. And all brands are kind of working on these processes. It's hard to make fast fashion more accountable. Partly, it's really up to the consumer to sort of speak to, you know, use their voice to make a brand more accountable. But it's tough. There's a very tough solution to arrive at.
Thank you.
Thank you so much today to everyone for attending. I'm happy to take questions afterwards. I'll be here. So if you have a question, please come and chat to me afterwards. And I'm happy to answer to the best of my abilities any questions that you might have. But thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We have an acknowledgement for you from Intermoda. Muchísimas gracias a todos. A la 1 de la tarde hay una conferencia también en este mismo espacio. Por si les interesa, pueden checar el programa para ver todas las conferencias que habrá durante el día y los esperamos durante esta tarde. Muchas gracias.
I feel like Flavor Flav. I have to get a chain, put it around my neck.